we keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I am joined with the one, the only, the marvelous Dan Marver, and it is time for our monthly visit with one of our brothers, one of the best in the business. You can check out his latest article over at Cubbies Crib. It sounds like the Cubs are close to bringing back Pete Crow Armstrong. He is also from the mothership over at Heartland Signo. He is our brother from Cubbies Crib. He is Rich Eberwein. Rich, welcome to the show, brother. Welcome back, my friend.
You know, Mike, it's always a pleasure to be here. It's not always a pleasure watching Cubs baseball, especially right now, but, you know, we're having fun with it. We got to just, brush off these horrible wins and keep it going. It's a long season, you know?
It's what I've been saying, you and I have been saying off air. Marver and I have been talking about it for years. The month of May is the new curse for the Chicago Cubs, and it has been the same thing this season, whether it's been injuries or it's just been trying to figure out what is not broken on this roster, on this current team. So, Rich, why don't we talk about that first? The month of May has not been good for the Cubs. So seeing as how we are finally getting to June and this series ending with Milwaukee, seeing what you have now coming up over the next few weeks, including a series with hometown rival Chicago White Sox, what did you think about the last showing from Shota, the entire month of May, what we have seen these last 31 days from the Chicago Cubs?
It's been a struggle. I mean, they have a 10-16 record in the month of May, and honestly, I think they're lucky to have 10 wins. The way that their offense has been operating, you have their batting average as a team is the second lowest in the month of May at 214, worse than the Reds, and actually worse than the White Sox. Slugging is tied for second worst in the league. WRC Plus is tied for third worst in the league in the month of May. It's been a struggle. The offense has very much been. You can lay this 10-16 record at the feet of the offense, at the feet of the offense. Starting pitching has been phenomenal. That's pretty much the only reason that they have 10 wins right now. And aside from yesterday, Shota Imanaga's first blow-up game, starting pitching has been fantastic in carrying this team. And the Imanaga thing, you know, he was bound to have a bad game at some point. I don't really weigh it too much on the 10 days of rest thing. I think he was getting gas before that in his last start. When he was coming off his last start, he told the press that he was feeling fatigued. He was coming off back-to-back games where he only had 4 days of rest. So he needed extended rest. Maybe 10 days was a little too much. Maybe got him out of the groove a little bit. And on the road against Milwaukee wasn't a good place to maybe throw him back in. But here we are. You know, he was going to have a bad game eventually. He's not going to have a sub-1 ERA for the entire season. These things happen. What matters is bouncing back and scoring more runs. The offense needs to score more runs. They were in a position to win yesterday, but Kyle Hendricks kind of gave up the game. You know, that's another thing we could talk about. But yeah, man, I mean, they really need to start making some hay here as they go into June and July. Now that the offense is fully healthy, Cody Bellinger and Suzuki, Swanson and Horner are all back in the lineup every day. Hopefully they can start getting a groove going and get some more runs on the board and more wins on the record.
Marvelous? Yeah,
I mean, obviously, yesterday aside, the starting pitching has been unbelievable, quite frankly. And Imanagi, even except for yesterday, that start was record-breaking in terms of, you know, his ability to shut everybody down. I mean, basically it was all zeros, and even with Tyone and Steele and Assad, it's been pretty spectacular. It's the bullpen that has been a problem, and it's sad to see that the last piece of the 2016 championship team maybe they'll have to do something to ceremoniously dispose of him, namely Hendricks. But in terms of we're talking about the offense. I mean, I don't know if these injuries set people back, like Suzuki, for example, and Bellinger seems to be back in the groove now. He's doing like he did before, where he's punching singles and such. He has this ability to, instead of slugging, to get base hits, and that's what they need really in the middle of the lineup. And even Morel, I mean, he was a homer machine, and now he's not. So and same with Bush. So it's kind of a puzzle. And fortunately, we have the correct remedy coming up. The Crosstown series will hopefully be the right recipe for getting out of the funk. I mean, even Cincinnati. I mean, they'll see Tampa. It's and I still harp on this, but the divisional play. I mean, they didn't even see St. Louis till Memorial Day weekend, and they won't play them in September. But don't get me started.
Marver, really fast. So to catch Rich up, this has been a through line over the last few years of Marver's distaste and just absolute hatred towards the schedule makers. It was one thing to get him kind of into the American League versus National League every day kind of thing, but the division thing has been a real line for Marver and for a lot of baseball fans. Marver, I want to throw this to you because I know you still have thoughts you wanted to rattle off about the Cubs, but I want to add this to your arsenal of things that you're delivering to Cub fans right now and anybody listening to us with our awesome guest, Rich Eberwein, joining us here on the Sports Cubicle. It's the Marvelous One, Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado. It is our May checkup of the Chicago Cubs, and Marver, I am really questioning right now the roster development, the roster structure that has been this particular season when it comes to Jed and Carter, and not anything negative in the sense that they've done a horrible job and blow the whole thing up, but more specifically keeping up Nick Madrigal and how much we have seen Nick Madrigal. And I know a lot of it has been necessity because of injury, but they put themselves in that position where he's the one that they have to use as the ultimate utility man. They're the people that have brought in the lack of bullpen help. And I'm wondering, these were the same front office that went all in on Cody and didn't do anything to Chapman, didn't do anything to really boost up this offense. What are your thoughts about the roster construction all throughout May now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I would have never predicted that the third base would be the way it is. I mean, obviously, Morello's developed into a pretty decent third baseman, better than I would have actually expected because it's not his natural position. But be that as it may, the thing is that eventually we'll talk about the farm system. So I don't see anybody that's a third baseman there. But of course, there's outfielders in the farm system, some of whom we've seen, and some of whom we'll see again. But I don't know if that's going to help the offense much. I foresee perhaps a trade deadline move. Even for bullpen help and third base, I still think that would help tremendously. I see Morel as a DH possibly, down the road. But Rich, what do you think about in terms of getting some help? I think more from the major leagues than the minor leagues, personally.
Yeah. The only person who I think could help this major league team on the offense who is in the system right now is Matt Shaw, who could be that kind of super utility infield kind of bat that would replace Nick Madrigal down the road. Obviously, it's dependent on his development and how much he can advance. He's in Double-A right now, but he's the type of guy who can play third, short, second base, probably first base if you needed him to, and got a really nice stroke, good contact hitter. That's the type of guy who I would like to see to be their utility man come August and September. If not, I agree. I say go and get another bat similar to what they did when they went out and got Jamer Candelario at the last trade deadline, because you have a farm system that's pretty much ranked top 5, if not top 2 or 1 in the league consistently right now. You have the prospects to deal and the capital to make trades, so I say go out and get bats and bullpen help too at the trade deadline if they're in the conversation for either being in the division race or wild card spot.
So it's interesting that Marvelous brings up what can be out there for the farm system to maybe bring in somebody from the outside, and what you're bringing up of having the farm system maybe being the thing that remedies this team. My question is whether or not people believe this Cubs team is ahead of schedule, because all of a sudden in the month of May, I have now heard people saying the Cubs aren't really in it this year. They weren't trying to be winners this year. They're a year ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
It's almost, to me, the weirdest new development in this carrying of water for this team that's struggling right now, because you could say maybe they were thinking this season in particular when it comes to spending money, we want to see how good we are, just how good we are, where we should invest, how much should we get at a trade deadline. But I think it's been weird recently. I don't know if you've heard that, but I've heard it in major local stations saying that this is a new development, that they were a year ahead of schedule when Vegas had them.
They were 100% trying to win this offseason. They gave Craig Counsell the largest managerial contract in the history of baseball. They went out and traded for an everyday first baseman in Michael Busch. They might be platooning him now, but they see him as an everyday first baseman going forward. They went out and signed Shota Imanaga to replace Marcus Stroman. They were making moves to win this year. I mean, obviously they didn't go out and get I don't even remember who was the biggest bat on the market last year.
Shohei.
But whatever. Yeah. They didn't. Nobody else was going to sign Shohei Ohtani. I mean, come on, let's be real. So they were definitely trying to win. I think it's easy to say that right now because we're just baseball season. The baseball season goes through peaks and valleys, and right now we're in a deep valley. They're 10-16 on the month. They've fallen to 500. It's easy to look at this and be like, where did the roster construction go wrong? What did they do in the offseason? Like, it's just this is just how baseball goes sometimes, and it doesn't help that half the freaking roster got hurt already, and we're not even in June. So they've just gone through some bad luck and had some poor performance on the offense. It'll get better.
Guys, the other guy that they may have been looking at was Alfonso with the Mets, but didn't Counsell get a nice warm welcome back in Milwaukee? It was beautiful. and funny, guys, to look at it's early, but if you work out the wild card standings right now in the National League, the Cubs are in it, even still with this awful May.
Yep.
If you check it out, seriously. So they're in the playoff race despite all this.
Well, I think this is what really upsets me the most, and I think it's just to be critical about this particular season, putting everything history, and I think it's important to put things in context, because if you're going to hear one narrative of people telling you that they're a year ahead of schedule, that means it takes the front office off the hook. When we know for a fact, like Rich has brought up, and like Marver is currently bringing up about the standings, this team was trying to compete. The people who make money, that build literal cathedrals in Las Vegas, told you the Cubs were supposed to win the NL Central. What upsets me, and this is critiquing something like a Scorsese movie or a Tarantino movie, or one of your favorite shows, it's nitpicking. But the idea is this: Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins went into this offseason knowing what the problems, the blemishes on this roster were, and they didn't address it. They did upgrade with Shota compared to a Stroman, but that didn't answer any of the bullpen questions. That never answered the Kyle Hendricks' aging question. That didn't answer where you were going to get some of the offense on this team. That didn't answer the question of you were developing a everyday starting third baseman in Christopher Morel, and doing that while you're trying to win an NL Central, trying to find the perfect spots for Cody Bellinger. So I think when we're having this conversation, it's important to be critical, but have the full context of what we're talking about. Because it's easy, like you said, to just say you should do X, Y, or Z when half your team is on the IL. But the Cubs didn't put themselves in the best of situations to handle a rocky bullpen or an offense that's shaky. They couldn't afford to not have Cody Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki and Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson struggling. So I think that's where Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, and on some level, Craig Counsell, deserve the blame. I don't know, Rich, what do you think about that?
I'll push back a little bit on the bullpen thing. I don't think anybody was expecting the bullpen to be this bad, mostly because Adbert Alzolay took a major regression, right? Nobody saw that coming. Like, yeah, you could look at him last year and be like, okay, maybe he got lucky in this like closer role, right? Like he just so happened to like find lightning in a bottle, but and I think everybody kind of knew in the back of their mind that he's not really a long-term closer. Still, nobody was expecting him to just go and just get shelled every time he went out there. The other big blow to this bullpen this year was Julian Merriweather going down. He was sort of like your Steve Cishek, threw like 70 innings last year, 100 strikeouts. That's a major loss to the bullpen. Your main setup guy and your closer. I don't think they were expecting to lose those guys. And also, I don't think anybody was expecting Kyle Hendricks to be this bad. He was supposed to be your fifth starter, essentially, and he is unusable. A regression is expected from a guy that old who doesn't throw that hard, but to be unusable and to the point where we're talking about DFAing him, I don't think they were expecting that. We could sit here and be like, well, they should have expected it, but how could you? I think they did make moves that I was satisfied with this offseason, and I think it will get better moving forward.
Getting Neris was helpful, at least in some respects, with the rest of the bullpen imploding. So that's been good. And, like you say, they did have some setbacks on in the bullpen in terms of injuries there, too. Even still, there's definitely that was affected just like the lineup.
And we are breaking things down here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. He's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. We are joined with our brother from Cubbies Crib. He's from the mothership over at Heartland Signal. He is Rich Eberwein. You can check out his latest article. It sounds like the Cubs are close to bringing back Pete Crow Armstrong. And before we head out from this conversation and we look into June, when we all commence again and see how June went for the beloved in the north side of Chicago, what do you do for the future? What do you do moving forward? You and I, Rich, were talking off air over at the Cubicles by the water cooler of bringing up Pete Crow Armstrong is obviously a good move. It's talent. You can never go wrong with having more talent, and he's been doing a good job in the minor leagues recently with the bat. But I still don't think that's the answer to the problems of this team. It's a Band-Aid or maybe a little bit of an ointment to an infection or bullet wound, but it is something, it is talent, it is a move that they're doing. But what do the Cubs do moving forward? Is it a big move? Are they willing to sacrifice talent in the farm system this early in what people are saying the early development of their run? Is that noise coming from the front office? Are they giving themselves an out saying we're a year early? Where are you for the month of June moving forward for this roster?
I think it's too early to say what they're going to do. If they're going to bring in a big bat like Pete Alonso or something at the trade deadline, bringing up Pete Crow Armstrong is the best player right now because he is on fire, and like we were saying, the offensive struggles have been hitting this team pretty hard, and he is the type of player who can manufacture runs almost single-handedly. That series against the Braves, he had a bunt single, swiped a bag, hit an RBI trip, legs out a triple, scores on a sac fly. This guy produces runs with his legs. Those are the type of players you need on the roster when you're in this offensive funk that they're in. The guy who can spark the offense and bat lead off and swipe bags and take the extra 90 feet. I think it's the best player right now. It's not, obviously they're in a power drought. Pete Crow Armstrong can't really help on that front, but they just need better production out of their power hitters. Like we said earlier, Christopher Morel, Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki, they're doing better recently this past week. Maybe Ian Happ is in that category too, but they need to start hitting for power. Those are your power positions. Michael Busch too. Dansby Swanson is also in a deep offensive slump that's obviously his knee issue was a big part of that, but they just need to get their offense rolling a little bit, and I think Pete Crow Armstrong could help them do that.
Yeah, indeed. The question then is, who does he bump from the lineup? Does he play center and move Bellinger to first?
I think Mike Tauchman.
Yeah, right.
I think the play would be, and Carter Harkins was saying this on 670 The Score yesterday, that they're trying to get PCA. The goal for PCA right now, whether it be in AAA or in the major leagues, is to get him in the lineup 9 days out of 10. To do that, you need to start him in center field, I think. Probably move Busch off of first base and put Cody Bellinger there, and then that means Mike Tauchman gets a lot less playing time, and then you platoon Busch, and maybe Patrick Wisdom at DH and maybe Tauchman too. Look, Mike Tauchman is great. He's been a consistent hitter, but you're paying Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki $20 million. You're not going to move them off of their positions. And Pete Crow Armstrong needs to be in center field, I think. He plays better. Cody Bellinger is like a Gold Glove center fielder, and Pete Crow Armstrong is arguably better, or has the potential to be better. So, and him out there patrolling, with Happ and Suzuki, you're basically covered, man. So I think that's the play, and Mike Tauchman is kind of the odd man out there.
You mentioned that, and one other name. Whatever happened to that home run machine, Patrick Wisdom, who looked like the next Chris Bryant after Bryant was traded? Isn't it he's really come down a level or two or three.
And it just goes to show that's what they're just craving right now, just more than anything. They have professionals on this team. This is, and I think for all Cub fans, I think this is after a great conversation, a roundtable of us trying to figure out this month of May that was for the Chicago Cubs is, even though it's as bad as it can get for a month, so many injuries, because you did have the injuries, you did have the losing streaks, you did lose to the teams you weren't supposed to, and you lost to the teams you were hoping you wouldn't lose to, and you're still in it, and you still have a chance.
It's a long season, man. Baseball is a long season. There's time. There's still time.
Stay optimistic. Enjoy it. And here's the thing. Be a critical sports fan. Look at what the team is telling you. Look at the production and look at what's happening on the field. Right now, the Cubs aren't playing good baseball. They're playing extreme baseball, though. This is not how the offense is going to be the entire rest of the summer. It may not be the best offense in baseball like it was in April, but it's not going to be the worst offense like it is in May. So find the medium. And if you do, the medium for this Cubs team is an NL Central divisional run. And that's all you can ask for when you haven't had one in a while.
That's all?
Hey, Paul, I think you were doing a Frank Sinatra song there. April, May, shut down in May.
Marver, any final thought, Marvelous?
No, I think we've covered everything. We got, like I say, I think the antidote is the White Sox next week. Hopefully.
One can only hope.
Oh, you know what? We say that, but you just never know, I guess, in the days of summer. Rich, this was absolutely amazing. Anything you got down the pipeline that you're working on? Any final thoughts on what is going on this month of May heading into June for the Cubs?
Nothing in the pipeline. Like I said, the offense just needs to come around. It will. We're going into June and July. Cody Bellinger thrives in these months at Wrigley Field, so I'm optimistic. Nothing in the pipeline, but you can follow me on Twitter where you'll see me angrily tweeting if the Cubs are losing and probably angrily tweeting if the Cubs are winning. So,
yeah, and I appreciate you check us in the mail for being my therapist every single time they blow a lead during a game. Check out his work over at Cubbies Crib. It sounds like the Cubs are close to bringing back Pete Crow Armstrong. That is one of many amazing articles our man Rich Eberwein is writing. He's also from the mothership of the Sports Cubicle over at Heartland Signal. Check out his work there as well. The man is a man of many different trades, and he is one of our brothers, one of the best in the business, one of the best breaking down Major League Baseball and the Chicago Cubs. Thank you all so much for this Cubs Roundtable as we brought it back together in May. A really bad month for the team that plays over on Clark and Addison, but everything will be okay because it's still June and we still got a whole lot of baseball left to play, so we'll see how it all works out for the Chicago Cubs. For the marvelous one, Dan Marver, for our amazing guest, Rich Eberwein, I'm your host, Mike Mercado. We got more coming up here on the Sports Cubicle.